This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we are going to update and upgrade our Sheoldred the Apocalypse EDH deck. Thank you for joining us for another installment of the Up and Up series. Today we are updating and upgrading our Sheoldred the Apocalypse EDH deck. In the description of this video, you'll find links to the deck tech for the Sheoldred build, as well as the complete up to the minute, up to the second, up to the millisecond deck list, and this build's video primer series. We've got a few cards going in, which means we've got a few cards coming out, so let's get right to it and do whatever we need to do to keep Sheoldred happy. Alright, the first card going into the 99 of this deck, the first new card going in. Yes, we have finally acquired a copy of Master of the Feast. This has been quite a journey, I must say. This dude needs a reprinting in the worst way. We'll just leave it at that. Alright, here we have a 5/5 demon with flying for 1 and 2 black mana. For those kind of stats, you know there must be some horrendous drawback that's really going to come back to make the game that much more difficult for us. Well, at the beginning of our upkeep, each opponent draws a card. In a lot of other builds, this guy is just going to get neglected and looked right past. However, here in Sheoldred, where we want our opponents to draw cards and draw some more cards and then draw even more cards after that, including Master of the Feast is a great way to ensure that our opponents' life totals continue to tick down precipitously till they reach 0. So without any hesitation, Master of the Feast is getting jammed right into this bad boy, and it's not even going to be difficult to find a place for it. So with that 5/5 menace on our... doesn't have menace, it's just a menace. So with this demon going in, making sure that our opponents continue to draw those cards and lose that life, it's going to replace Dark Deal. Now notice that the mana value here is the same. Master of the Feast is 1 and 2 black, Dark Deal is 2 and 1 black, so the overall mana investment is 3. So let's see what Dark Deal was doing in this deck for us. It's a sorcery. It has each player discard all the cards in their hand, then draws that many cards -1. So we had a one-shot with this spell. We were able to cast it one time because, let's face it, it's a sorcery, and in black it's inordinately difficult to return some sorceries from our graveyard to our hand. So right off the bat, for the same investment of mana, we should be able to get more uses out of Master of the Feast than we would Dark Deal, particularly because it has a presence on the battlefield as a 5/5 flyer, and it only is a mana value of 3, and that's exactly what Dark Deal is here. Additionally, Dark Deal does hurt us. We do have to discard the cards in our hand. Yes, we will draw some fresh cards -1, and we will gain life if Sheoldred is on our side of the battlefield. Of course she would be. Why else would we cast this spell if our commander wasn't on the battlefield? But here, we're not hurting ourselves by putting Master of the Feast in play. With Dark Deal, maybe there are cards that we did not want to discard and put into our graveyard, and then we're lessening our hand by not just 1, but by 2, because we're casting the Dark Deal, that comes out of our hand, we're discarding the rest of our cards and drawing 1 less. So in a lot of ways, Dark Deal takes away 2 cards from our hand, and I'm just thinking that I'd rather have our opponents putting cards into our hand with Master of the Feast, having a bigger border battlefield presence with the 5/5 flyer, and not hurt ourselves by discarding our own cards. So Dark Deal out, Master of the Feast in. So, of course, with this being a Sheoldred the Apocalypse deck, everything is revolving around our opponents drawing cards. So let's include a card that's going to, I don't know, accentuate that theme for us. Card number 2 going into the Sheoldred build. Yes, Orcish Bowmasters. Here we have a 1/1 Orc Archer with Flash for 1 and 1 black mana. And when this Orc Archer comes into play, And whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first card they draw during each of their draw steps, Orcish Bowmasters will deal 1 damage to any target, and then we amass Orcs 1. To amass Orcs 1, we either put a +1/+1 counter on an Orc army we control, or we create a 0/0 Orc army and then put a +1/+1 counter on it. I'm going to be honest with you, this is going to get out of hand very, very quickly in this type of build. With all of the spells and abilities that we have that are going to jam cards into our opponent's hands, we're going to deal additional points of damage straight to our opponent's life totals if we so choose, or we're going to rid the battlefield of any pesky and nuisance chump blockers or any creatures that might be threatening to us to allow our massive Orc army to just swing in unblocked and bring the life total of that opponent even closer to 0. Orcish Bowmasters, in a way, is going to act as half of what Sheoldred can do from a life manipulation standpoint. Each time an opponent draws a card, Sheoldred has that opponent lose 2 life. Orcish Bowmasters, as long as it's not the first card during their draw step, can add an additional 1 point of damage to make that 3 points each time an opponent draws a card. Yes, damage and life loss are different thematically within the game, but outside of any kind of preventative measures that our opponents might have, it's only going to reduce their life totals more and more. Orcish Bowmasters is going to do a lot of work in this Sheoldred build. It easily slots into the 99 here, replacing Damnable Pact. Here, another sorcery is coming out. Again, similar to what we said with Master of the Feast in replacing Dark Deal, the repeatability is very, very enticing here. With the Sorcery of Dark Deal, it was most likely a one and done. Same thing here with Damnable Pact, except Damnable Pact only targets 1 player. Now, yes, we could target ourselves to draw those X cards, and we have done that in the past because, we will end up gaining life in the end if Sheoldred is on our side of the battlefield as well. More often than not, this just kind of sat in the hand waiting for an opponent's life total to get low enough to cast the pact and drain them out with Sheoldred on our side of the battlefield. Now, with Orcish Bowmasters going in, which on a point-by-point mana value, Orcish Bowmasters is 1 and a black, and this is 2 black. We have to have an X in there, of course, so we're actually saving mana by putting Orcish Bowmasters in place of this spell, and through the use of its repeatable ability, it's going to blow anything that the path could have done right out of the water. Very, very easy 2 swaps here. These 2 cards that are already going in, they're just going to make this build so much stronger, and it already is quite formidable. All right, 2 cards in, 2 cards out. We've got 1 more card going in. And this card, it's not even fair to put this kind of card in this kind of build. So let's just get to it right now. Our last edition for today, the One Ring. Yep, it's going in, and it's going to cause a lot of problems if it gets onto the battlefield. We have a legendary artifact here for 4 generic mana, and when the One Ring comes into play, if we cast it, which we will gain protection from everything until our next turn. At the beginning of our upkeep, we lose 1 life for each burden counter that's on the One Ring. We can tap to put a burden counter on the One Ring and then draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring. Yes, we do have the potential of the life loss. However, just for some reminder, as we slowly shift the One Ring away from our commander, each time we draw a card, we gain 2 life. And each time we tap this, we're going to draw cards equal to the burden counters on it, and then we're going to lose that much life at the beginning of our upkeep. But it's not going to matter because we're always going to come out on top. If we end up tapping this thing to draw 10 cards, we're gaining 20 life after we lose 10 life at the beginning of our upkeep. It's just that simple. It's a game of numbers. And it's one that our opponents will not win. The One Ring is going to be a fantastic addition to the Sheoldred deck. It's going to put cards into our hand, and it's just going to make it so much easier and quicker to end up winning the game. With the One Ring going in, it's going to replace Dread Presence. Now, this is a creature for 3 and a black mana. It's a 3/3 nightmare that whenever a swap comes into play under our control, we get to pick one of the following 2 modes. Either we draw a card and lose 1 life, or Dread Presence deals 2 damage to any target and we gain 2 life. So we need a swamp to activate this. It's a creature, and as we know in Commander, creatures are a little easier to remove from the battlefield than artifacts. There is the potential for repeatability, of course, because the mana base of this deck is very heavily skewed towards snow-covered swamps. So getting a swamp to come into play on our side is not difficult as long as we have them in our hand, and with as many card-drawing spells as we do have in this deck, that's never a problem. However, again, for the same mana value of 4, the One Ring costs 4 generic, the Dread Presence costs 3 and a black. For the same overall investment of 4 mana, we're getting much bigger bang for our mana investing buck. The One Ring outperforms Dread Presence, has a longer life on the battlefield, and should produce much more favorable results once we get it onto our side of the battlefield. So I think all 3 of these changes here, Master of the Feast, Orcish Bowmasters, and the One Ring going in, are complete slam dunk inclusions. You let me know your thoughts about these changes in the comments section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, a channel for all things Magic.